What's the craziest thing your entitled neighbor ever did? When I moved into my first house last October, I thought the hardest part of fall would be raking leaves. I was so wrong. My next-door neighbor Glenn made it his personal mission to turn my life into a nightmare over dead leaves. Glenn was that guy who mowed his lawn in straight lines like a baseball field. He power washed his driveway every Sunday morning at 7. His mailbox literally sparkled. I'm not exaggerating. The dude polished it. The first week was normal. I waved, he nodded, cool. Then one windy night, some of my maple leaves blew onto his lawn. Not a pile, maybe like 10 leaves scattered around. I woke up the next morning to a plastic grocery bag taped to my front door. There was a sticky note that said, "Your trash, handle it." Inside the bag were 4 crusty brown leaves. I actually laughed. I thought he was joking. He wasn't joking. The next day, another bag, then another. Every single morning there was a new bag of leaves on my door. After a week, I started noticing some of them weren't even maple leaves. They were oak leaves from the tree on the other side of his house. Glenn was collecting random leaves just to make a point. I tried being nice. I went over one Saturday and offered to rake both our yards together. He looked at me like I'd just insulted his entire family. "Not my job to clean your mess, neighbor," he said with this smug little smile. Then he shut the door in my face. 2 days later, I'm drinking coffee and I see Glenn outside putting these little wooden stakes into the ground. He had a measuring tape and everything. He was marking the exact property line between our yards. When my daughter Mia ran outside to get her ball, she stepped over one of his stakes. Glenn came storming over yelling, "Stay on your side, kid. This isn't a playground." She was 5 years old. She cried for an hour. I wanted to knock on his door and lose it, but my wife told me to stay calm. We needed to be the bigger people, so I stayed calm. I raked my leaves. I kept my yard clean. I thought maybe he'd chill out. Then Glenn bought a fan. Not a regular fan. This thing was massive, like something they use on construction sites. One Saturday afternoon, he dragged it onto his driveway, pointed it directly at my yard, and turned it on full blast. I watched from my kitchen window as every single leaf on his lawn blew back onto mine. He stood on his porch with his arms crossed, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. I pulled out my phone and recorded the whole thing. 10 minutes of this lunatic blowing leaves with an industrial fan. The following Tuesday, I got a letter from the HOA. Glenn had filed a formal complaint saying my trees were intentionally polluting his property and creating a health hazard. A health hazard. From leaves. I had to go to a hearing the next week. I showed up with my phone, a folder of pictures, and my wife's cousin Brian, who's a lawyer. The HOA board sat there looking bored until I played the fan video. One of the ladies actually gasped. Then I showed them pictures of the stakes, the bags of leaves, and screenshots of my security camera showing Glenn yelling at my daughter. Brian explained that Glenn had been trespassing by placing stakes on my property, and that harassment of a minor could be escalated if needed. The board didn't even deliberate. They fined Glenn $300 for harassment and told him to remove the stakes immediately. But Brian wasn't done. He filed a small claims suit against Glenn for trespassing, harassment, and emotional distress. Glenn tried to act tough in court, but when the judge saw the video of him screaming at a kindergartner for picking dandelions, it was over. Glenn had to pay me $800, remove every single stake, and write a formal apology letter. The judge made him type it, sign it, and get it notarized. Glenn handed it to me outside the courthouse without making eye contact.